If you live in Albuquerque, Tuesday is Election Day, as you know. Dan Lewis and Tim Keller are in a runoff election to be the next mayor of the state's largest city. Special correspondent Martha Burke sat down with each of them to talk about some of the key issues in the campaign. The full interviews are online. Let's hear part of each of those interviews now, starting with Dan Lewis.
Thanks for coming in, Mr. Lewis. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Well, let's start with the number one issue with the voters, and that's a crime situation in Albuquerque and really the state, but certainly the city accounts for most of it. You and your opponent both want to hire more police. Recently, though, you have been running some ads that are attributing quotes to your opponent, Mr. Keller, regarding judges and the crime situation, and the quote has shown not to be accurate. He never said what is in the ad, and you were asked about it by KOB and asked if it was a dishonest bit of campaigning, and your answer was that's for you to decide. Tell us what you meant by that.
Well, there were quotes in the original ad. We took the quotes off, did that pretty quickly. But the bottom line is that everyone knows the judges in Albuquerque is catch and release judges. And Tim has said over and over that he would not blame the judges. I want to take responsibility for that. Judges that are, everybody knows them as catch and release judges that are dumping dangerous people back on the streets of Albuquerque. Any mayor that's not concerned about that is fooling themselves. We need a mayor that'll take responsibility and recognize, help people understand in this city that there was this reform to the criminal court system. The idea was to reduce the jail population, and they sure did. They put together programs like pretrial services. They decimated the bail bond industry, and now we have judges that are making decisions that are dumping dangerous people on the streets of Albuquerque. And so I want to not only point that out, I want to rate the judges, I want to score the judges and help people understand the decisions that are being made that are making our streets a whole lot more dangerous.
Well, certainly I think everybody is in favor of transparency, which is what that would be. And I think rating the judges is probably not a bad idea in terms of the public perception of it. However, the mayor actually has no jurisdiction over the judges. It's a constitutional amendment issue that the voters passed in a referendum, and it's also a rulemaking thing that the mayor cannot affect. So what exactly would such a checklist do to reduce crime in the here and now?
You know, I mean, obviously I'm not a Supreme Court judge. And if I was an attorney and I was saying the things that I've been saying on the campaign trail about judges, I'd probably be before the state bar right now. But I'm not. I'm an elected official. I'm running for mayor. I'm a citizen of this city. So I'm going to talk about the things that are hurting this city right now. And so we need a mayor that's going to stand up and do that. Even if we just make people aware. And I can tell you this too, that just the attention that my campaign has put on this issue, the tide is already beginning to turn. There are more conversations that are going on in Santa Fe now and among the Supreme Court judges and the legislators right now. The governor came out last week and proposed a reversal of the bail bond decisions that were made. And so a mayor and certainly a candidate has already affected this issue that's making our streets a whole lot more dangerous. And so, but what are we going to do? Now, I have a 10-page crime plan, and that crime plan spells out very specifically what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what our police department is going to look like, and how we're going to pay for it. So very specific and very detailed. We're going to have new leadership at APD.
I've been a big critic. Give me one specific off that plan.
Sure. I've been a big critic of APD leadership, so we're going to have new leadership in APD. We're going to pay for 1,200 officers in our city. $15 million that I will put into a mid-year budget substitute. I'll propose it as mayor. The mayor has to do that. 9 city councilors are not going to take a status quo budget and make those kind of changes to the budget. So we have to have a priority in our budget on public safety. So 1,200 police officers we'll get to, and here's how we'll do it. By putting the priority in our budget on public safety to the Albuquerque Police Department. We're going to do raises and competitive pay at 5 years, at sergeant, at lieutenant. make sure we have a competitive pay so we're not losing officers to other agencies, which is what is happening right now. And we're going to attract lateral officers from places like Dallas and Denver and other agencies. In Dallas, that police department just gutted their pension program. We have one of the best pensions in the country at APD. So we'll use that along with competitive pay to attract good officers, put them through a shortened academy, and then get them on the streets of Albuquerque responding to calls. My plan also talks about how we structure APD, with 60% of our officers in field services responding to calls, answering calls, 30% in our detective bureau that are gathering evidence, investigating crimes, and showing up in court where our officers, the judges want them to be.
Speaking of the police, your opponent has the backing of the police union. You have said in the last couple of days, and maybe more often than that it was a backroom deal with the union leadership, and that the rank and file supports you, not what the union came out for. Now, as mayor, you're going to have to work with that union. And this seems like you may be getting off a little bit on the wrong foot. What is your plan going forward for working with the union instead of pushing back against them?
I've worked with those unions for the last 8 years, and we have a great relationship. They know, those union leaders know how much I've done for them, how hard I've worked as a city councilor to make sure they had the funding that they need. So they know it, but the rank and file also know it too. And the fact is for a candidate to say that the police department backs me because they were endorsed by the APOA is just absolutely false. There were 12 people in that room, 12 people that voted out of 820 police officers, 12 people that were a part of the union leaders that voted to endorse him. And so today's to say that...
Does the membership have to ratify that, or did they not get a say?
No, this is a political PAC that endorsed him, along with thousands of other dollars in political PACs that gave some to the tune of $20,000 to $25,000 to a slush fund that Tim Keller has, that now he's being charged for coordinating with. In fact, he's got 3 violation charges, 3 ethics violation charges right now against him.
Yes, I know, and a couple of them were brought by one of your fellow candidates who is
They're
now
before the
out
Board
of
of
the
Ethics.
race.
The Board of Ethics didn't even have to see it, but they chose to actually hear those ethics charges. And there's certainly a lot of evidence of coordination.
You are running ads, well, you are not running ads. Ads are running against your opponent, calling him soft on crime, and I've heard you actually use those words as well. But those ads are not being paid for by the police union or even by an anti-crime group. They're being paid for by an out-of-state developer who wants the Santolina development to go through. That's a 21 square mile for development on the southwest side of I-40. It's going to take a lot of taxpayer support. It's going to take a lot of water. And the mayor is going to sit on the Albuquerque-Bernalillo Water Utility Authority. That would be you if you're elected. And opponents to Santolina say, look, Albuquerque needs all the water it can preserve and get. It also needs other resources that might go to that development. We have a lot of infill that we need to take care of. Where do you stand on that development?
Well, it's an interesting lead into the question as far as the motives of that PAC with those kinds of attack ads on Tim. Look, the fact is, I've said that, and people know that Tim is soft on crime. His record shows it. He's put criminals in the city before law-abiding citizens.
But where do you stand on the Santolina?
Well, we're going to get there. You started the question with talking about these ads and
I've
what
also
Tim's
been
accused
told
of.
that,
So you could separate the
Yeah.
idea of water and the need for water and development on the west side with the fact that Tim is corrupt. This is a corrupt partisan
no,
Santa
I'm
Fe
not
politician.
separating the water. What I'm saying is that's an out-of-state PAC that is supporting attack ads. And I have not heard you speak out against the attack ads. In fact, you just spoke.
Absolutely not. I'm not going to speak out against attack ads because those attack ads are true. People may not like how they're done, but they are absolutely true. on the issue of putting criminals before law-abiding citizens in this city. I mean, Tim voted, and I'll get to the Santa Lena, absolutely, I'd love to talk about that. Tim voted to keep the city of Albuquerque from making decisions on where sex offenders could live.
Yes, he did.
He
It
removes
was a
those
statewide,
restrictions.
it was a statewide.
SB 184, it was statewide, yeah. So at the very least, what he did was say, Santa Fe should decide on this, not the city of Albuquerque. This is a partisan political politician who spent a lot of time in Santa Fe voting with his party.
Well,
And this is a nonpartisan race here in Albuquerque. We're talking about decisions that are good for this city, and first and foremost, protecting the people of this city, protecting women and children. Not dangerous and disgusting bills like SB 184.
where do you stand on Santa Lena, quickly?
I support Santa Lena because I believe that it's going to create jobs.